Shock in Westminster as Rishi Sunak reshuffles his government and brings back David Cameron as Foreign Secretary. The former Prime Minister will be given a peerage so he can take up the role. Does his return mean the Conservatives are making a sudden shift back to the centre? Well, today's reshuffle began with the sacking of Suella Braverman as Home Secretary. Downing Street say she was got rid of because of issues around language. She's been replaced by James Cleverly, who moves from the Foreign to the Home Office. Meanwhile, among the shuffle of ministers today, Laura Trott, a former Cameron-era advisor, is promoted to Chief Secretary to the Treasury. She'll be joining us on the programme. All that and more with Stephen Hammond and John Whitturnan, who will be with us for the next hour. It's Monday. I'm Sophy Ridge, live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. Honestly, I'm still reeling. Suella Braverman sacked as Home Secretary, promising she'll have more to say in due course. I bet she will. But the mad thing about today is that's not even the big story in town. David Cameron has been appointed Foreign Secretary. David Cameron, or Lord Cameron, as I should call him now. What does this all mean? Well, it's not just your usual reshuffle. Who's up, who's down, who's in, who's out. This is a much more fundamental shift. Out with Suella Braverman and in with David Cameron. I mean, you can't just tell me that's just shuffling your pack of cards. Something else is going on. And it's left me asking, who is Rishi Sunak? Is he the swashbuckling Brexiteer who talks tough with Suella on small boats in Rwanda and hints about leaving the European Court of Human Rights? Or is he a one-nation Tory who likes hugging huskies and hoodies with David Cameron? And it's also left me asking, what is going on with the Conservatives' election strategy? Because I thought they were going to try and fight the next election on immigration and the culture wars to try and keep hold of voters in the Red Wall who backed Boris Johnson and Brexit. But with David Cameron, Laura Trott, Victoria Atkins promoted, the March of the Centre, it seems to me like this is a reshuffle designed for the blue wall, those Tory shires that threat from the Lib Dems. Maybe, just maybe, we'll look back on today as the day the Conservatives gave up on the Red Wall. Lots to take you through. Let's just start off, shall we, by recapping on some of those cabinet moves today. Suella Braverman, as we've been talking about, has been sacked as Home Secretary days after her controversial newspaper article criticising the police. Her replacement is James Cleverly, who leaves his role as Foreign Secretary to become the new Home Secretary. Now, the former Prime Minister, David Cameron, is now Lord Cameron after being granted a peerage to become the new Foreign Secretary. Therese Coffey has resigned as Environment Secretary. Her replacement is Steve Barclay. He leaves his role as Health Secretary, and in his place, Victoria Atkins is promoted from Financial Secretary to the Treasury. In terms of other big promotions, Laura Trott moves from Pensions Minister to Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and Richard Holden is now Conservative Party Chairman, leaving behind his role as Roads and Transport Minister. Keeping track, while Sky's political editor Beth Rigby reports on an extraordinary day in politics.
The cameras trained on this front door, the PM inside now with everyone's attention after this jaw-dropping addition to his cabinet. The former Prime Minister is back as Foreign Secretary. No one saw David Cameron coming. The Rishi reset is on.
David Cameron, are you pleased to be back in government, sir?
Appointing an old PM not without risk, Cameron brings with him a leader's charisma and command, but complications too, be it Brexit baggage or controversies around his post-Parliament life.
As an ex-Prime Minister, I've tried to keep quiet about politics, stay out of politics. It's hard enough being Prime Minister without having your predecessors endlessly giving a running commentary. But look, of course, I've disagreed with some individual decisions, but politics is a team enterprise. I've decided to join this team because I believe Rishi Sunak is a good Prime Minister doing a difficult job at a hard time. I want to support him.
The day started with a vacancy finally opening up after days of speculation.
Have you said back me or sack me to the Prime Minister, Mrs Braverman?
The Home Secretary sacked after her criticism of the police was judged by the PM a step too far.
Are you pleased with the new job, Home Secretary?
The former Foreign Secretary James cleverly moved to the Home Office to replace her.
Do you want to distance yourself from the rhetoric of the previous Home Secretary?
Well, I intend to do this job in the way that I feel best protects the British people and our interests.
Also out to raise coffee, the former Deputy PM to Liz Truss, as Mr Sunak finally put together a cabinet in his own image. Victoria Atkins moved to the health brief, rising star Laura Trott, the Chief Secretary, to the Treasury, and Steve Barclay, the new Environment Secretary. But even as Number 10 briefed this as a new start with new faces, criticism of the return of an old one.
One thing the return of David Cameron doesn't signal is change. You can't fix the problems Rishi Sunak is facing with personnel changes. You can only fix them with policy changes, and the Tory party can't do that.
It doesn't sound like change that Rishi Sunak told us he was going to give. It sounds like desperation.
For months, the Prime Minister's been struggling to get you, the voters, to give him another look. But today he's grabbed all of the attention. Now, putting David Cameron back into the heart of his government might be seen as the very opposite of change, but it is bold. And here's why. Rishi Sunak is finally doing it how he wants to do it. And yes, these cabinet changes will divide, but at this point, the calculation has to be, what has he got to lose? Around here, the PM will at least have more confidence of a united cabinet, even as his aides acknowledge this reshuffle will deepen party divisions. A new look cabinet for the country, an election on the horizon. Can they now make it count? Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, Beth is here with us now. What a day, Beth. I mean, it's a cliche, but what a day. It's a major reshuffle, a big moment for Rishi Sunak. It's going to really matter how it goes down with the voters, whether the polling changes, but also, I guess, for his own party as well. How is it going?
Well, and that was what I was saying in the piece to camera there, outside Downing Street. Look, they did this knowing that it would divide. I think there is a calculation of he's been bumping along the ground for months. He can't take off. We didn't have a take-off moment at conference. We didn't have a take-off moment at the King's speech. And now he has to switch stuff up. He has to try and signal that he's doing things differently. He has to take some risks. And they've done it knowing it will divide. And hey presto, you know, tonight we have a letter of no confidence submitted to Sir Graham Brady from Andrea Jenkins, a key backer of Boris Johnson. She writes, enough is enough. If it wasn't bad enough that we have a party leader that the party members rejected, the polls demonstrate the public reject him. I'm in full agreement. It's time for Rishi Sunak to go. She says at the end, I hope other Conservative MPs follow suit. It's our last chance to stop Starmer, the man who tried to put Corbyn into Number 10. We need to stop this socialist cabal that will change the face of Britain beyond recognition. And we know, too, that the new Conservative group that backs Suella Braverman are meeting tonight. Where are they? Well, look, you know, someone briefed me earlier that there was going to be talk about leadership play. They were very quick to tell me that wasn't about leadership bidding or a leadership bid. And I didn't get the readout from her backers anyway over the weekend that that was where they are at. But leadership play says to me that she is going to be quite outwardly on manoeuvres now from here to an election, getting the attention of the Conservative press in order to try and impress upon them that tacking to the right is the way that this party should go when Rishi Sunak loses that election.
I mean, we saw what she was like inside the tent. It'd be really interesting to see what she's like outside of the tent. I just want to kind of zoom out. I just can't really believe the day that we've had. I mean, look, we've been in Westminster long enough. We've covered reshuffles enough. This felt like a moment to me. What do you think it tells us about Rishi Sunak?
I think the first thing it tells us is that for a long time now, a lot of people in his party have been complaining that he's too managerial. He's a chief operating officer. He's not a leader. He's managing. He's in the detail. He's not showing vision. OK, these have been the repeated criticisms. I think what this reshuffle does is it signals intent. It grabs people's attention. He's bringing David Cameron back into his cabinet. It carries huge risk. One former cabinet minister was saying to me, David Cameron's quite charismatic. Will he outshine Rishi Sunak? David Cameron's also divisive, all that Brexit baggage. There's also all of the issues around his life after government that might give Labour to something to go for. It's undoubtedly a risk. But I think Rishi Sunak is saying, I need a united cabinet behind me. I cannot even attempt to try and win the public back if I am having to look left and right the whole time around the cabinet. But also, Sophie, you were asking sort of in your introductory thought there about kind of what does it say about how he wants to lead in terms of the shift in politics of the Conservative Party. I think it is true that there was an assumption at the beginning of September that Rishi Sunak was moving the party to the right, really tough on immigration. Would gender wars be stoked in a general election? What we've seen in terms of some of these appointments is he's sort of bringing one nation Conservatives back to the fore, going back to the centre ground, be that David Cameron or be that Laura Trott, who worked for David Cameron in government, or be that Vicky Atkins. But is he forgetting the Red Wall? I mean, there's two other interesting elements in that too, isn't there? There's Esther McVeigh, leader of the blue-collar Conservatives, coming back in to Cabinet Office, coming off GB News, back into government to do comms for him, to talk to groups of voters for him. And Rick Holden, a Red Wall MP in Durham, never even thought he'd win that seat, coming back as party chair. So, you know, the way I would read that is this a Prime Minister trying to rebuild some sort of coalition that they, you know, had back in 2019, 2017, 2015, and he's trying to go back to that and bring all sides in. I think the question we obviously all have is that, will it shift the polls? I think what I have taken from it is that attempt number 3 of the Rishi reset, it feels at this moment he genuinely is trying to now reset the government, pick some fights if he has to, and try and get on with closing that huge gap with the Labour Party.
Fascinating stuff. I have to say, after spending the day with you shivering in our kind of coats and scarves on Downing Street, it's quite nice to be in the studio, cups of tea under the desk.
Do you hear what everyone was calling us as well?
Don't give it away, because that's going to be later on the programme.
You've got to stay tuned
Stay tuned for that, because there's a nickname going around the office that we're going to reveal to you later. Anyway, thanks very much, Beth. There you are. Now, one of the big winners today was Laura Trott. Last week, she was on this programme as the Pensions Minister. Well, tonight she joined us as a newly promoted Chief Secretary to the Treasury. I asked her reaction to the promotion.
I'm absolutely delighted. I was literally preparing for DWP orals in my old role as Minister for Pensions, and you just get a call and told to be in number 10 in 5 minutes, which is obviously very exciting. I get to smile at you on the way up, Sophie, not knowing what you're going in for. And then
avoid the shouts.
And then, well, you don't know, right? You've got no idea when you're walking up.
Probably won't be sacked, though.
That is the hope, but, you know, anything can happen in politics. But no, I'm absolutely delighted.
What are your main priorities in the new role?
I think I'm going in, you know, I'm joining a team, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, who are absolutely focused on growing the economy and making sure that we bear down on inflation. So that is my priority too. Obviously, we've got the autumn statement coming up, and I'm looking forward to working with the Chancellor on that in the next week or so.
Don't take this the wrong way, but your appointment's been completely overshadowed by the return of David Cameron. You obviously used to work with him.
I did.
So you must be quite pleased.
I am. I'm absolutely delighted. I think he brings a depth of experience to the government. Something, you know, he has been a statesman over many, many years, and I think he will bring enormous amounts to the government, and I'm delighted that he's doing the role.
There's now as many former advisors to David Cameron in Cabinet, including yourself, as there are MPs who represent northern constituencies. Is that a problem?
Well, I think you've got Rick Holden, the brilliant Rick Holden, who is now party chairman, which is fantastic. And of course, the Prime Minister represents the northern
There
team.
too.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then you've got Laura Trott on the other side.
But I think what is really, really important is you've got a strong and united team here who are focused on delivering the change that the country needs and focusing on the people's priorities.
We talk a lot about who's up and who's down in reshuffles, that the sort of personalities. But it feels to me that this is a significant moment. Does it signal a change of direction from the government?
I don't know about a change of direction, but this is the Prime Minister's team. This is a team which are 100% behind him, who are going to really make the difference to people.
But it matters on policy terms as well, doesn't it? Like,
yeah.
For example, we've been talking a lot about still having the kind of revolver on the table about potentially leaving the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights. I mean, come on, with David Cameron as Foreign Secretary, that's off the table now, isn't it? That's not going to happen.
No, this is the Prime Minister's government.
Come on, you're not going to leave the ECHR with David Cameron as Foreign Secretary.
I'm not going to comment on
another
that.
one.
I think this is if you think about the direction of government in terms of cracking down on small boats, on making sure that life means life, on delivering on the benefits of Brexit, none of that has changed.
It feels, though, look at the overall composition of it. Suella Braverman out, David Cameron back in, yourself, someone who would presumably describe yourself as a kind of one nation Tory promoted. Is it a sign that you've given up on the red wall? And actually, for the election next time, you're focusing on the core vote, the kind of blue wall constituencies?
No, not at all. We are focused on delivering the priorities of the people of this country, and that includes stopping the boats. We've made huge progress, but we're going to go further. That is one of the first things that James Cleverly said today as Home Secretary. We are focused on driving down on crime. That was a big focus within the King's speech. Making sure that life means life. That is an incredibly important issue that I know resonates across the country. And then also on delivering on the benefits of Brexit, which is something that Kemi remains very focused on.
It's a serious point here, though. I'm just trying to work out who Rishi Sunak is. Is he the kind of swashbuckling Brexiteer who backs Suella Braverman on small boats? Or is he the kind of one nation David Cameron lover who wants to hug huskies and hoodies? Who is he?
I think he's not defined by someone else. He's defined by who he is, somebody who is a patriot who is determined to deliver for the people of this country, who has worked incredibly hard on stabilising the economy, who is bearing down on inflation right now, who is making sure that we're stopping the boats and making sure that we're growing the economy. He is a very decent individual who is a real privilege to work for.
Was it the right thing to sack Suella Braverman?
It's the Prime Minister's decision who he hires and fires.
What's your opinion, though?
No, I mean, it's the Prime Minister's decision.
You're going to have to get used to this. Now that you're on the cabinet table,
I'm always
you're going to have to ask these kind of questions. Of course,
and I'm always delighted to speak to you,
Was it the right
Sophie.
decision to sack Suella Braverman?
I think it's the Prime Minister's decision, and I'm obviously here backing the Prime Minister, but it's not for me to speculate who's up and who's down. And also, this is
she's down. I can tell you what's happened there.
This is the personal thing, right? It's not very nice. She's a colleague. I don't want to be focused on the past. I want to focus on the future and the united team that the Prime Minister now has.
She has said that we're going to hear more from her in due course. Do you think she could be a bit of a problem on the backbenches?
I'm not going to speculate on that.
Come on. She's going to be a leadership rival for him, isn't she? She's been running the campaign for the last few months.
At home right now, people are suffering from inflation. They want to hear about a government that is dealing with that. They want to hear about a government that is making sure the economy grows, that's making sure that they're cracking down on crime in the streets. This is not, I'm not going to indulge in speculation about the future of individuals.
It's not just the future of individuals, though, it's the future of the Conservative Party, isn't it?
Yeah, but
that's why I'm asking the question.
The future of the Conservative Party, at the moment, we are in government and we are delivering the long-term change that the country needs.
Do you think that this is an election-winning team now around the Prime Minister?
Yes, I do.
And do you think that this is the team, I guess, that he always hoped to would be able to assemble, but perhaps wasn't able to before?
I don't know about that. I don't know what the Prime Minister was kind of thinking on that specifically, but I do know that this is a strong team that is united behind him.
Do you have an issue with the fact that there isn't a single woman in the four great offices of state?
No, I think that what we've seen is the right people in the right jobs. I mean, I'm obviously, come into cabinet. I'm incredibly proud about doing that. I am from a comprehensive school background. This is something that is, I think, what we see here is people being judged on their merit.
Laura Trott speaking to us there. Now, the one thing that no one was talking about before today was a return to cabinet for David Cameron, or Lord Cameron, as I should call him. He's not only been given a peerage today, he's been made Foreign Secretary. Quite the comeback. Sky's political correspondent Rob Powell reports.
Back in the loop, the 7th Foreign Secretary in as many years for a politician who's been out of office for just as long.
So we'll have a new Prime Minister in that building behind me by Wednesday evening.
It was 2016, after the referendum, that David Cameron resigned as Prime Minister.
Thank you very much.
Singing himself out of Downing Street. Brexit, undoubtedly his biggest foreign policy legacy, leading the Remain campaign, but failing to convince voters.
I do think that David Cameron and Rishi Sunak realise that they do need to work with Europe, and they do need to be in a position where we've got a perhaps better trading position than we have at the moment. So is David Cameron going to suddenly start making all the old Remain arguments? Is he going to go out there and do that? No, he's not.
In office during the Arab Spring, David Cameron was ultimately criticised for the UK's intervention in Libya, with MPs calling it incoherent and ill-informed. On Asia, too, the world has changed since he shared a pint with the Chinese premier and held a golden era in relations.
These days we have a much greater awareness of the security risk posed by China. So I think people will want to hear the assurance from David Cameron that we're not signalling a return to the sort of approach that we saw previously.
Back home, David Cameron criticised the axing of the HS2 rail line to Manchester last month, and he became embroiled in a lobbying scandal after taking a job for the billionaire Lex Greensill and approaching ministers about his now-defunct financial services firm.
There are multi-billion-dollar lawsuits all over the world related to Greensill, and each one of these is going to involve lots of sort of additional information that's going to come out about Cameron's role.
Sniffed at for hunkering down in a luxury shepherd's hut to pen his memoirs while Parliament grappled with Brexit, Lord Cameron now has another chapter to write. His closing words to MPs in 2016 now seeming somewhat premature.
After all, as I once said, I was the future once.
Rob Powell, Sky News in Westminster.
Well, we're certainly going back to the future today. Let's speak now to our guests, the Conservative MP Stephen Hammond and the political strategist and former political advisor to Tony Blair, John McTernan. Honestly, what a day. I guess my main question to you, Stephen, is this just a shuffling of the decks, or is this something more fundamental? Is this a shift of direction from the Prime Minister?
I think it's more fundamental. I mean, yeah, what a day, what a surprise. No one expected it. Although we have seen former Prime Ministers or former party leaders come back as Foreign Secretary before, and I think David Cameron will offer gravitas in that role, which we will need to continue given the conflict in Ukraine and Gaza. But I think it's a fundamental shift. I think it's a recognition of the Prime Minister that he has now the chance to make sure the government is in his image, which is professional, competent, and with integrity. I think it also means that there is a recognition that you win elections by being on the what I call the common ground of politics. A lot of people call it the centre ground, where actually most people want. And actually, I think one of your pieces talked about immigration and wokery. The reality is that we're starting to see some improvements on illegal immigration, but we need to make sure we're compassionate on refugees and asylum. I think that language is going to come through more clearly now. And I think by being on that centre ground of British politics, as it's so often called, is a much better place for the Conservative Party to be. So if you're like me, socially liberal, moderate, fiscally responsible Conservative, the Prime Minister has had a good day.
You're pretty happy today, then?
I think most of the changes are, as I say, firstly in his image. Secondly, you see a lot. You've just had a great chat with Laura Trott, who is, a really talented politician. And it shows, initially at the beginning of the day, there's, by going back to David Cameron, you're not seeing enough of the new people coming through. You've seen that later on today. You've also seen, both blue wall and red wall being included. So I think it's an attempt now for the Tory party to make sure we can unite behind this and actually make to narrow that gap on the Labour Party, which is what we're there to do.
I guess my other question is, who is Rishi Sunak after all this? There's been various iterations, it feels to me, of the kind of current government.
It's not clear that he knows. Today was like a political soap opera, wasn't it? It's like the end of the series of Dallas when Bobby Ewing emerges from the shower. It's all been a dream. David Cameron comes back to the government. It's all been a dream this past year of Rishi being a technocrat or a right-winger or anti-net zero or so many identities. Just in the last 3 or 4 months, the conference speech where he directly attacked David Cameron as being no more or no less of a socialist than Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. So the one place that the Prime Minister seems to be happy is being a tech bro, as he was with Elon Musk last week. It looks farcical to all of us from the outside, but feels natural to him. And I think that is the difficulty. He's not a natural politician. None of the stories that are told about him to humanise him, like when he became Chancellor, he'd done some spreadsheets overnight to tell Treasury how to add up numbers. He's got to, to be a politician, you have to make quick calls, you have to have strong identity, strong sense of your internal politics. And, what does it feel like today? It felt a bit like when Gordon Brown brought back Peter Mandelson. But Peter Mandelson was brought back for a purpose by Gordon, which is that Gordon needed somebody to help him communicate his politics. Gordon had politics. We still don't know, not just Rishi's personality, but his politics. I think he's a Thatcher person. I think he believes tax cuts are the things that work. But what does this cabinet reshuffle tell us about what the budget will look like? I don't know.
I think you want to come back in, do you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think one of the great things about soap operas is the good people win in the end. And Rishi Sunak is someone that the British people can trust, and they will now have a chance to see him and saying what he's saying. He's out there making the long-term decisions, which I think you're going to hear more and more about, obviously.
Okay.
But I think this is good news for the Conservative Party today.
It'll be interesting to see which one of you is proven right. Well, the polls, I'm sure, will give us a bit of an indication of that in the coming weeks and months, if they can be closed. Much more from you, both on the show. Still to come, though, on the Politics Hub. We're going to have more on this extraordinary day in politics and the real Rishi reset. Don't go away.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I'm based in Belfast, a city transformed by peace, but still struggling with its past. Politically, the two sides are as far apart as ever, and it's over that question of who has sovereignty in Northern Ireland, the very issue that's been the source of tension here for generations. It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century. I've spent 25 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
We help you understand the world with us.
Today, we have reached an agreement with the Conservative Party on support for government in Parliament.
We already know what the government gets out of this deal. What exactly does the DUP get out of it? Well, £1.5 billion. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record. You can't live in a place like this and not appreciate the environment.
Hello again. Right, absolutely tons of coverage, reaction, analysis of today's reshuffle on the Digital Politics Hub, as you would expect. I want to just show you a couple of the stories, if I can. This one here, this is from housing campaign groups talking about the sacking of Housing Minister Rachel Maclean, which means the newly appointed Lee Rowley, who ran Kemi Badenoch's leadership campaign, is the 16th Housing Minister since 2010. Extraordinary. Campaigners say the change, coming just a day before the Renters Reform Bill reached a crucial stage in its passage through Parliament, shows what they call a shocking lack of respect for England's 11 million private renters. Next story, let's have a look at this one, shall we? Now, in the heady toings and froings of who's up and who's down, it's easy to get a little bit overexcited. As Justin Tomlinson, here he is, the Conservative MP for North Swindon, found out. He posted on X, Twitter, I'm still not used to X, just how he just saw a colleague confidently striding out of Parliament. He definitely deserves a promotion, so I wished him good luck. Turns out he was off to Greggs. Shame. Here we go, next story, final one that I'm going to bring you on the hub today. Now, Labour don't get much of a look in on a day like today, but this line from the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, Liz Kendall, in the Commons was picked up. She was asking the DWP Secretary, Mel Stride, about the number of young people in over 50s out of work. And a dig about David Cameron, she said, it turns out the government can get the over 50s back to work, only if they are former Prime Ministers. See what she did there. Now, if you scan the QR code, you can catch up with all of the latest on the hub throughout the day. Now, today is the kind of day that political junkies, Westminster watchers live for. A truly significant, wide-sweeping reshuffle, and Sky News has been at the heart of it, bringing you every twist and turn as it happens. Now, I described it earlier as one of those make-up in the back of the car days, dashing to Downing Street to cover it live. We are at the centre of a dramatic reshuffle today. Suella Braverman out as Home Secretary, David Cameron, yes, that David Cameron, in as Foreign Secretary.
Morning. As soon as I saw him get out of the car, I thought, oh, serious face.
Tim, what's your reaction to all this?
I'm excited, first of all, Sophie. We don't have a surprise like this very often in Westminster.
He's doing it because Suella Braverman signed her own death warrant by the very foolish way in which she behaved. Not only should she go, which she has gone, but also who is the best person available to replace her.
I love it how, the door opens and me and Beth immediately just
and it's Larry.
And it's Larry. What are your thoughts on the bold moves the Prime Minister's made?
It's the best piece of political news for the government that I've had for many a long year.
Is this the Rishi reset? The door is opening. Is it Larry?
It's a policeman.
Thumbs up, next election win.
Thumbs up there.
Thumbs up.
I think he seemed pretty happy.
He must
seem pretty happy. What a day. I also wanted to show you this. Beth trailed it earlier in the show, because after I posted this photo that you can see now of our political editor, Beth Rigby, and me from Downing Street earlier. Now, this is what my boss here at Sky tweeted. You've been nicknamed Rhubarb and Custard in the newsroom. Dan Williams, I have to say, nothing else on the actual coverage, just Rhubarb and Custard nickname. I actually didn't realise that Rhubarb and Custard was a cartoon. I thought it was just something about the colour of our coats, but I learn something every day here in Westminster. Still to come on the Politics Hub this evening, Suella Braverman is out. How dangerous will she be for Rishi Sunak from the backbenches? We'll debate that. So welcome back. Now, some of those who closely watched the Conservative Party are feeling a bit of political whiplash today with the return of David Cameron. After all, it was only at Conservative Party conference last month that the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, was heavily implying that he was part of the failed status quo in his main speech. Some are hailing today's reshuffle as a party signalling it's going to fight the next general election on the centre ground. But how has that gone down? Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
A party conference propaganda video from the Prime Minister titled Rishi Sunak is change. Its message, a promise to break from decades of failed status quo.
Be in no doubt, it is time for a change, and we are it.
The return of an old face, not the change anyone was anticipating.
Private, that's the security detail just opening the door for David Cameron.
What?
Back to the future with a former PM in the Foreign Office. And back to the centre, too. David Cameron's brand of middle ground Tory politics has long been out of fashion. Suella Braverman had become the face of a new, uncompromising approach.
I think I've been pretty clear that these are hate marches.
With her sacked, a different approach. The new Home Secretary, one of the party's moderates. Unlike his predecessor, James Cleverly won't back tearing up human rights laws to send migrants to Rwanda. This all a shift that delights some on the backbenches.
Rishi Sunak is determined to lead a government that doesn't go off into the wilder shores of politics, that he is representing all Conservative traditions in his cabinet.
The right of the party much less happy. Ex-Minister Andrea Jenkins, the first public letter of no confidence in the PM, saying enough is enough. More anger in private, with Tory MPs telling me the centre-left wing takeover of the party is complete. It won't work any more than his strategy has over the last year. Another said, I wonder if the PM has been suborned by Reform, the right-wing party, as the reshuffle will be a boon for them. Another said, it's desperate and looks like you're flip-flopping. You go one direction one day, one direction the next.
Voters think the Prime Minister was right to sack Suella Braverman, but are less sure about the appointment of David Cameron. Just 1 in 4 voters support bringing him back as Foreign Secretary. But Conservative strategists know he has a different job: to shore up Tory heartlands. After years of talking about the red wall, it feels like that strategy is shifting.
Suella Braverman's Fareham constituency has been Tory blue for decades. Even here, voters are split.
What she said was right, is what everybody was thinking.
I'm really happy, and we're just hoping she doesn't have to be our MP next time as well.
The government is woke. You know, they are literally going against the wishes of the people again.
A focus on Tory heartlands like this means beating a retreat elsewhere. Another reinvention.
Well, Sam joins us now. Another reinvention. I guess the question I have is, who is Rishi Sunak? Who are the voters he's trying to win over at the election? Were we any clearer?
I think it's a really good question. We've had another answer to that question today. It feels like we've been in an enormous journey with Rishi Sunak, even the last 4 months after the Uxbridge by-election. The party took a turn that saw it disavow some of its environmental pledges, seems to lean in to quite a lot harder rhetoric on policies. Now, today, with the arrival of David Cameron, certainly moderates in the Conservative Party that I was talking to, like Damien Green in that film, think that David Cameron will not just be Foreign Secretary, but a guarantor of a different type of Toryism. I mean, what? What? I mean, how can you have a Prime Minister set out one vision at conference a month ago and then effectively bring in somebody else to do something different now? I think the appointment of David Cameron is a real risk for a number of reasons. I think that in the foreign policy space, his record on Syria, where he didn't get what he wanted on bombings, on Libya, which was very controversial, on the Golden Age with China, I think all of that is complex. But moreover, I think he's actually very controversial with Tories in other fields. He was the face of the Brexit referendum, but for the Remain side. But also, and this is the thing that's worrying people most, Tories in the Red Wall, is that he represented a different type of conservatism, one that pitched its tent in the centre ground. In 2019, the coalition that Boris Johnson knitted together and gave them an 80-seat majority actually was different they're worried that maybe they're being thrown to the wolves.
It's interesting. I mean, Stephen Hammond, speaking to him earlier, he's delighted. He says this is absolutely the kind of conservatism that you're all about. And yes, they are going back to the centre ground, but that's good news. That's where you win elections from.
But only 24% of the public thought that bringing back Cameron was a good idea. I was surprised that was so low.
Interesting. Risky appointment with David Cameron. Any other kind of big takeaways that you've got after watching what an extraordinary day in politics?
Look, I think Cameron's appointment sucked the oxygen out of the air. I think that James Cleverly's appointment could be the one that we're talking about more in coming days. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court will rule on Rwanda. If they rule against the government, there'll be a hue and cry to pull out of the European Convention on Human Rights. Unlike Suella Braverman, James Cleverly wants to stay in that, which is fine, except not for a rump of the Conservative Party who were hoping to make that kind of issue and that kind of dividing line with Labour pulling out versus Labour staying in the centrepiece of the campaign.
Really interesting to talk. Sam Coates, thank you very much for your analysis. Now, a little earlier, I spoke to the former Environment Secretary, Theresa Villiers. She also served as Northern Ireland Secretary under David Cameron, and I asked her if she had any inkling that David Cameron was about to return to the Cabinet.
I think it came as a bolt from the blue to most of us, but I think it's a good appointment. He'll bring a depth of knowledge and experience as a former Prime Minister. I'm sure he'll do really well.
Do you think it was the right decision to sack Suella Braverman?
Well, I feel sad for Suella that, as with other colleagues who've lost out today, but you know, I'm sure she'll find a role in the future. I'm sure she's still got a lot to offer.
But the question is, do you think it was the right decision to get rid of her?
I think that there's, you know,
come on. What do you think?
I would have been perfectly happy for Suella to stay in post, but I'm sure James Cleverly will do an excellent job.
And that's because you think that actually a lot of what she was saying people might agree with?
Suella done some important work. Some of the words that she used on certain issues are not ones I would have chosen. But yes, I think a strong focus on tackling illegal migration is in tune with what many people want to see happen. Her championing of the scheme for Rwanda and offshore processing, I think, is an important way to tackle what is effectively a humanitarian crisis in the Channel with people risking their lives every day. So those fundamentals that Suella backed, I think, remain important. But I'm sure James can take over and drive them forward just as effectively as Suella would have done.
She said that we'll be hearing more from her in due course. Do you think she's going to be a force to be reckoned with on the backbenches?
She's very talented. Absolutely, she will be a force to be reckoned with on the backbenches. I think what I am saying is that, you know, we all of us, our strong focus would be making sure that we get our manifesto commitments delivered so we're ready to fight and win a general election. And being a united party is crucial for both of those tasks.
It's such a big reshuffle, a blockbuster reshuffle, a kind of Rishi reset has certainly happened. And we talk a lot about personalities in these reshuffles as well, but I just wonder, do you think overall it marks a shift for the government, a shift from perhaps the right a bit more towards the centre ground, bringing back people like David Cameron, promoting people like Victoria Atkins, like Laura Trott, demoting or getting rid of people like Suella Braverman?
I think the goals the Prime Minister has set out remain unchanged by this reshuffle. You know, we're, for example, expecting some good news on inflation soon, I hope. He's determined to deliver on our manifesto. He's determined to deliver on those 5 priorities. And now he's just put in place what he feels is going to be the best team to help him do that. I don't think it signals a change of direction.
If you employ David Cameron, you know, as your kind of Foreign Office head of secretary, and you demote someone like Suella Braverman, I mean, you are sending a message, aren't you?
I don't think so. I mean, what certainly lots of colleagues will want to hear from David Cameron is that he's committed to the Brexit policy that the party now has. We, in accordance with our manifesto, we delivered on Brexit. We secured that extensive trade agreement with the European Union. There is still work to be done to resolve the issues that are causing problems in Northern Ireland. So David Cameron, obviously, in his era, had quite a different approach.
Quite a different approach is one way of saying it.
So I think, you know, he will I'm sure, be able to reassure my colleagues that he's comfortable with where the party is at the moment.
I mean, he's Mr Remain. He led the Remain campaign. He's now got to try and help negotiate with his relationships as Foreign Secretary with Brussels, with the EU, the kind of future relationship with the EU. Do you personally need a bit of reassurance on that?
I think everyone will be wanting to hear from David that, the approach he took as Prime Minister is a matter of past history, that he's content with a direction that the party has gone in.
He doesn't really believe in the benefits of Brexit, though, does he?
Well, you'll have to ask him that question. But I hope that he's recognised that we've started to make a success of leaving the European Union, and his role will be crucial in continuing that. But actually, it's not just Europe where I think people will be interested to hear what David has to say. They will want to know that the Cameron-Osborne golden age of relationships with China, that we're not going to return to that, because we've got a much more hard-headed, pragmatic view of China now, that, of course, we need to trade with it, engage with it, work with it on matters of mutual interest, but we also need to be alive to the risks and the security risks that China faces, not least its widespread espionage efforts in terms of trying to steal our intellectual property and attack our universities and our science and research.
Theresa Villiers there. Well, let's pick up now, shall we, with Stephen and John. We talked a lot about David Cameron. I want to talk a bit about Suella Braverman, because many people think that she is, the kind of leader in waiting, if you like. How much problems do you think she's going to cause for Rishi Sunak from the backbenches?
I think there clearly are a group of people who think that she may well be the answer, but that's for the future. I mean, I think that today, the last week had proved that it was inevitable what was going to happen today. The language on tents was clearly unacceptable. The wandering into the space on Northern Ireland was dangerous, and the language on the police was at best potentially incendiary, but certainly being that critical of police operations, when we as politicians always say it's our job to do the strategic but not the operational, meant that I think as Home Secretary her position became untenable. Undoubtedly, there are a number of people, good people on the right wing of my party who feel that she has a lot to offer, and it may well be so. But I don't think it's as big as a lot of people talk about. I've seen quite a lot of the times in politics that people who have got particularly passionate or lurch on one particular area of political spectrum make a lot of noise. Sometimes the numbers aren't there.
What's your take from a strategy perspective? If Suella's, if Suella Braverman's endgame isn't Rishi Sunak winning the election, it's her becoming leader of the Conservative Party, how do you think she's doing?
So she, as far as I've been able to see, she's been in a win-win situation since the middle of last week. She either gets sacked and is a martyr, or she doesn't get sacked and she shows a weak Prime Minister. And I think the difference that's shown by Suella compared to Sunak is she offers clarity. It may be a narrow conservatism, it certainly is from my point of view, and I think from Stephen's too, but it offers clarity, whereas what we've had is a change and a change and a change and a change about what Rishi actually stands for. Is this the final reset for Rishi? I doubt it, because once you start resetting and relaunching, you never stop in politics. And we live, and I think it was in your discussion with Beth really drew this out, we live in an attention economy. So for this day, Rishi Sunak has grabbed the attention of everybody in politics. But Suella had our attention on Sunday, on Saturday, on Friday, on Thursday, on Wednesday. She's able to do that again and again and again.
I guess the question
not dragged down by events.
Will she have that while she's no longer Home Secretary?
And I think that's the point. I slightly disagree with John. I think it's a lose-lose for her tonight, because she's no longer at the table. Her remarks will no longer be as significant. And quite a lot of people who are masters don't actually find there's a space for them to talk afterwards.
We'll have to see. I'm really sorry, I've got to come in because we need to get to this break, because there is one thing I do want to show you guys after the break. You won't regret it, don't worry.
Brilliant.
Still to come on the Politics Hub. It's a return no one expected. We're talking shock comebacks and unexpected political moments next.
Well, we all saw the Aurora display, which was a fantastic reminder that we interact with the solar system. It's the energy charged particles from the sun that cause the atmosphere, the gas in the atmosphere, to glow, and that gives us the northern lights, the Aurora borealis. Steve is a little bit more rare. It is related to the northern lights by way of the activity from the sun, but it appears as this kind of surreal streak of light across the sky. Sometimes it appears purpley pink in colour, and sometimes, in particular last night, it appeared to be quite white. And we believe it's some form of powerful stream of plasma. Now, if you cast your mind back to school days, you probably remember there are three types of matter. There's solid, there's liquid, and there's gas. Well, actually, there's a fourth type of matter called plasma, which is a gas which is electrically charged. And Steve is a powerful stream of plasma racing through the atmosphere. And it looks quite wonderful. It's quite rare to see, though.
Why is it called Steve? That's the first question that sprung to mind when I heard about it today.
Well, there are supposedly links to the kids' movie Over the Hedge. If you remember in that movie where this hedge appeared to the animals one morning, they decided to call it Steve to make it less scary. There's rumoured to be links to that, but it's an acronym for its official title, which is a strong thermal emission velocity enhanced. And that gives you a clue that actually it's quite high temperatures. And it's the velocity of the plasma through the atmosphere which gives us that wonderful light colour. I kind of prefer the Over the Hedge story, though, rather than the official. It is related to the activity on the sun, but I've only ever seen it once before from Norfolk, where I live. But last night, because we saw the Northern Lights, a very powerful display of lights, which are caused by this massive burst of solar particles.
Again. Now, it's fair to say no one was talking about the return of David Cameron to the Cabinet this time yesterday. When he got out of the car, it was a real what the moment. And over the past few years, politics has not been short of those. So it got us thinking about shock comebacks and some of the more unexpected political moments. You know what, I feel like I could broadcast for 100 years and never come up with a line as perfect as that Adam Bolton. I don't know why he's talking to a tree. Amazing. Stephen and John are here. I mean, talk about political comebacks. Mandelson is the one that we always think of, right?
Yeah, that was a great comeback. And it was... Peter brought a solidity and a strategy to Gordon's strengths. Gordon and Tony were a great duo, and then it turned out that actually Peter and Gordon were a great duo too, and I think that was an amazing one.
You think maybe David Cameron can have a kind of Lord Mandelson moment?
I think David Cameron will have a David Cameron moment and the support of Rishi Sunak moment. But, you had a great VT there. I mean, I just wondered, whether Adam Bolton then said to your producer, sack the cameraman because he hadn't got the right angle for David Cameron. But, who knows?
Amazing. And Nigel Farage, the other one, the other kind of master of the political comebacks, I guess.
Yeah, no. After his appearance at the Tory conference where he was mobbed, I saw him and I said to him, I'll pay for your membership of the Tory party if you really want to go back. Because that would definitely be a thing that would help the Labour Party.
Some of us are hoping he'll never find his way out of the jungle.
Yeah, of course, because he's going into the jungle. I'm a celebrity as well. I have to say, that's going to be box office television. So you think he's a bit of a drag on the Conservative Party then? I mean, no surprises.
Well, he was a leader of another party. I don't think that would be right to have him in the Conservative Party. Yeah. I'm a Conservative. I've fought my life for the Conservative Party cause. I haven't ever joined another party, and we've got a wide church and we want to keep that, but that's too far away for a lot of us.
Any kind of political comebacks on the horizon for the Labour Party?
Well, the Labour Party itself had a near-death experience in 2019, so that's probably the biggest comeback. Because I always say, said to Keir recently, but the Labour Party has taken it from 1984, the year after our worst defeat since the 30s, to 1996, the year before one of our best ever victories. And so I think the biggest comeback is Labour, and that's really down to Keir Starmer.
I guess Conservative Party could be hoping for a comeback as well, if you look at the polls.
Well, of course, John will remember that in Christmas 2008, we were 15 points ahead and didn't win.
There you go.
Yeah. So who knows what's going to happen now?
Who knows? That's up from us tonight. An extraordinary day in politics. I'll see you tomorrow at 7. Who knows what will happen by then?